Emma Whitmore stood outside the glowing glass doors of Laurel and Pine, the bakery she once knew better than her own home. Snow had just begun to fall over the quiet Vermont town, dusting the sidewalks and rooftops in white. The evening sky was a deep blue, and golden light spilled from the bakery windows, lighting up the street like a beacon. Emma took a slow breath, her heart pounding. She had traveled across states, across years of silence, to finally stand here again. Her hands trembled not from the cold, but from the fear of seeing him. The man she once loved, the man she left behind. The man who still lived in every quiet thought she had tried so hard to push away. Emma had built a life far from this town. She had a stable job in Boston, a comfortable apartment, friends who believed she was happy. Yet none of them knew the truth, that every time she baked cookies on a Sunday, she remembered his laugh. Every time she smelled cinnamon or maple, she heard his voice. For years, she told herself it was just nostalgia. But when the email arrived last week, everything inside her shifted. It was simple. Grand reopening this Friday. It won't be the same without you. Noah. No emojis. No explanations. Only words that reached places she thought were long gone. She pushed the door open, and the familiar scent of freshly baked bread wrapped around her. The soft bell above the door chimed the same gentle sound it always had. Memories flooded back, late nights sitting across from Noah while he tested new recipes, the gleam in his eyes when he talked about flavors, the silent moments when their hands brushed as they reached for the same bowl. She shook off the thoughts. It had been 12 years. Perhaps he'd forgotten. Perhaps this was all in her head. Inside the bakery was transformed. Warm lights hung from wooden beams, casting soft shadows on the walls decorated with framed photos of the town. People laughed, sipped hot chocolate, and chatted over pastries. But Emma barely saw any of them. Her eyes locked on the counter. Noah Rivers stood behind it. His hair was a little longer, darker, his shoulders broader. His face had changed, more defined, more mature. But his eyes were exactly the same. Warm brown, thoughtful, steady. And they were on her the second she walked in. The room went quiet around them. Or maybe it was just Emma who stopped hearing everything else. For a moment, she couldn't move. She had rehearsed this moment 100 times, planned casual greetings, confident smiles. None of it came out. Her throat tightened, and all she managed was a slight nod. Noah rounded the counter slowly, wiping his hands on his apron. He didn't rush. He didn't smile widely or act surprised. Instead, he looked at her with quiet certainty, as though he had always known she would come. Emma, he said softly. Just her name. Her knees felt weak. Hi, Noah. You made it, he said. I told you I wouldn't miss it, she replied, trying to keep her voice light. But you didn't say you were coming, he said. His tone wasn't accusing. It was honest, observant, the way he always had been. Emma shrugged slightly. I wasn't sure until I got in the car. For a second, he just looked at her, like he was reading between every word she spoke. It used to annoy her how easily he could see the truth beneath her sentences. Tonight, it made her feel seen in a way she had missed more than she wanted to admit. Come on, he said finally. There's something you need to see. He led her past the counter, through the warm chatter, toward a display case near the back. People greeted Noah as he passed. They called him Chef, Mr. Rivers, the heart of Maplewood. Emma realized with a small jolt that in all these years, while she had been searching for success, Noah had quietly built roots. He belonged here. He stopped in front of a covered glass dome. Underneath, she could barely see the outline of a dessert. Soft, layered, delicate. Her breath caught. She knew that shape. She had seen it before, a long time ago, unfinished. It was the recipe Noah had been working on the night before she left town. A recipe he said was inspired by the way her presence made everything a little sweeter, a little unpredictable. Back then, she had laughed it off, too afraid to ask what he truly meant. Now, the dessert sat finished, perfected. Noah looked at her, his voice barely above a whisper. I never put this on the menu. I never made it for anyone else. I never finished it because I promised myself. I'd only finish it when you were here to try it. Emma's heart thudded so loudly she wondered if people could hear it. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. What could she say? That she thought of him every night she couldn't sleep? That this dessert had haunted her dreams? That she left because she was too young to understand love, too scared of how real it felt? Before she could speak, a couple walked by, congratulating Noah on the reopening. He nodded politely, but his gaze stayed on Emma, unwavering. "Why now?" she asked, her voice quiet, raw. Noah folded his arms, leaning slightly against the counter. "Because I'm done waiting for life to happen to me. I built this place for a future I believed in. And whether or not you stay, I needed to finish what I started." Emma felt the truth in his words. This wasn't about guilt or nostalgia. This was about closure, or maybe beginnings. She stepped closer to the display. The dessert glistened under the soft lights. It wasn't just food. It was a question. Noah lifted the glass dome slowly. The scent of maple and citrus rose into the air, faint but captivating. Emma's eyes widened. It smelled like autumn evenings and winter mornings, like laughter in the kitchen and quiet confessions under low lights. He looked right at her. "So," he said gently, "after all these years, are you ready to try it?" In that moment, Emma knew this wasn't only about tasting a recipe. It was about everything she ran from. It was about the life she could have had. About choosing courage over comfort. And though she hadn't planned her answer, something inside her shifted. The past wasn't gone. It was waiting, right here, in the form of a single bite that could change everything. Emma met Noah's gaze. Her lips parted. The room around them faded. She was finally standing at the edge of the chapter she had always been afraid to read, and the question still hung in the air, gentle and powerful. "Are you ready to try it?" Emma didn't realize she had stopped breathing until Noah gently placed a spoon in her hand. The dessert sat between them like a silent invitation, glowing under the warm bakery lights. Conversations around them flowed effortlessly, but it all sounded distant to Emma, as though the world had muted itself so this moment could exist in perfect stillness. Noah said nothing more. He didn't need to. His eyes held a quiet question, the same one that had followed her across 12 years. Would she finally let herself feel what she once ran from? She gripped the spoon, her fingers trembling. The dessert was soft, delicately layered with whipped cream, maple sponge cake, and a golden drizzle that sparkled in the light. It looked beautiful, but it wasn't beauty that made her heart ache. It was memory. She remembered the night before she left Maplewood. They were both younger, sitting on this very counter after closing time. Noah had been experimenting with flavors, laughing when his fourth trial failed, swearing he would discover something that feels like a promise in every bite. She didn't realize then that she was part of what inspired him. She thought it was just a recipe. Now she knew it was his heart. Emma raised the spoon slightly but paused. "Why did you wait this long?" Noah leaned against the counter, removing his apron, revealing a simple gray sweater. "Because finishing this dessert wasn't about getting the flavors right. It was about timing. I couldn't complete it when you left because the story behind it wasn't finished." He paused, eyes searching hers. "I guess I was waiting to see if you'd come back to finish it with me." Emma's throat tightened. She looked down at the dessert again. The air between them was soft, charged with meaning. "What if I don't like it?" she asked, half teasing, half terrified. A slow smile touched his lips. "Then I'll keep trying until I get it right." Her chest warmed. That was Noah, steady, patient, always willing to try. She remembered how different he was from others. While she chased success and ran from discomfort, Noah built things that lasted. A bakery, a life, a dream big enough for both of them, if she chose to be part of it. Emma lifted the spoon again. But just as the first bite touched her lips, laughter erupted from the front of the bakery. The bell above the door chimed loudly. She turned. A tall man stood there, brown hair, sharp coat, suitcase still in hand, eyes locking straight onto her. David, her fiancé. For a moment, time stopped again, but this time, not with warmth. It stopped with shock. David's eyes moved from Emma to Noah, then to the dessert. His brows lifted ever so slightly, but he didn't speak. The room quieted as people sensed tension. Emma slowly lowered the spoon, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Noah stepped back, giving space, his jaw tightening slightly. "Evening," he said cautiously. David's voice was calm, but the tightness around his eyes revealed what he was feeling. "I flew in as soon as I read your message, Emma. You said you needed time to think." "You didn't mention..." This Emma swallowed. She hadn't told David she was coming back to Maplewood. Their relationship had been safe. Stable dinners, polite conversations, a quiet expectation that their marriage would be practical and mutually beneficial. But she never told him about Noah. She had never told anyone about the life she almost had. "I didn't know you would come," Emma finally said, voice low. David's gaze shifted toward the dessert. "Is this what you came for? A piece of cake?" Noah took a slow breath. "It's more than that." David looked at him. "I'm sure it is." Emma felt pressure building in her chest. She could see the confusion in David's eyes, not anger, but disappointment. And in that moment, she understood something painful. David had never truly known her heart, not because he didn't care, but because she had never given it to him fully. She turned to Noah. He held her gaze, not demanding anything, not pushing, just waiting. Like he had been for years. David stepped closer. "Emma, I asked you to marry me because I believed we were building a future. I didn't realize your past was still living inside you." Emma's eyes filled with heat. She hated hurting anyone. She tried so hard to be the responsible one, the one who made logical choices. But love wasn't logical. It was messy. It was flavors you couldn't separate. "I never meant to mislead you," Emma said. "I care about you, David. You are good to me. But there's a part of me that never stopped living here." She placed a hand gently over her heart. "In this town, in this bakery, in that dessert." David held her gaze for a moment, then nodded slowly, as though the truth had been there all along and he had simply refused to look at it. "I understand," he said simply. Then softly he added, "Just be honest, with yourself and with him." Without another word, David turned and walked out. The bell chimed again. The door closed. And silence followed. Emma stood frozen. She expected relief. But instead, she felt a deep trembling inside her chest. The kind that came when you stood at the edge of something life-changing. Noah stepped forward, his voice gentle. "Emma," tears welled in her eyes, not of sadness, but of overwhelming clarity. "Noah," she whispered, "I was scared. I kept chasing a life that made sense on paper. But nothing ever felt real unless it started here." He didn't speak. His eyes said everything. Pride, pain, hope. Emma looked at the dessert again. It wasn't a question of flavor. It was a question of truth. She picked up the spoon one more time. The bakery seemed to hold its breath. She took a bite. The moment the dessert touched her tongue, everything stopped. The flavor was warm, tender, a perfect blend of sweetness and citrus that felt like sunrise after years of cloudy days. Emma's eyes filled with tears. It tasted like beginnings. It tasted like home. She set the spoon down gently. Her heart was no longer racing with fear, but with certainty. She met Noah's gaze fully. Something inside her had finally awakened, the part she buried long ago, and as Noah stepped closer, eyes shining with emotion he could no longer hide, Emma knew her life had just crossed a line, not backwards, not forwards, but toward the truth she had always run from. The question still echoed softly between them, not as a challenge, but as a promise. "Are you ready to try it?" Emma stood there, the taste of Noah's dessert still lingering softly on her tongue, sweet, warm, and almost heartbreakingly gentle. It was more than flavor. It was a feeling she had run from years ago, thinking she needed to chase something bigger, something louder. But the quiet truth was standing in front of her in this little bakery, in the eyes of the man who never stopped believing she would return. Noah didn't speak right away. He watched her closely, his gaze steady, as though trying to read every thought moving across her face. Emma stepped back slightly, pressing a hand against the counter to steady herself. The dessert had unlocked something deep inside her. Memories, yes, but also clarity. It reminded her of who she was before fear took over. Before she convinced herself that love had to be practical to be safe. The doorbell chimed again, and murmurs spread through the bakery. People whispered softly, looking outside as David walked away into the cold night. Emma knew eyes were on her, but the world seemed to shrink until all she could see was Noah. She expected him to question her, to be angry, to demand answers. But he simply stood quietly, his expression unreadable, his breathing calm. Finally, he spoke in a low voice. "You loved him?" Emma blinked, her throat tightening. "I tried to," she said honestly. "I thought love was supposed to be built slowly, with logic and stability. I convinced myself that passion was just a phase. That what we had was just youth. And now? Noah asked. There was no bitterness in his tone, only sincerity. Emma's voice trembled. Now I realize what we had wasn't youth. It was real. It scared me and I ran. But I've never felt anything as real since. A long pause followed. The bakery lights flickered slightly as the heater kicked on, filling the air with warmth. Outside, snow continued falling, quiet and peaceful, as though the sky itself was listening. Noah walked toward the counter and gently picked up the plate with the half-eaten dessert. He placed it in front of her again, this time not as a question, but as a confirmation. When you took that bite, Noah said softly, you weren't tasting a recipe. You were tasting a moment I've been holding on to for 12 years. Emma's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. Why didn't you move on? His eyes softened. I tried. I focused on the bakery, on growing something meaningful. People came and went, I dated. But no matter how far I went, everything tasted incomplete, her heart twisted. She felt a painful awareness of how her absence had shaped his life. And yet, instead of resentment, all she saw in him was quiet acceptance. Emma stepped closer. I never forgot you, Noah. I never stopped wondering what would have happened if I stayed. And what did you imagine? He asked quietly. Emma looked around the bakery, the place that was once just a dream and now stood as a warm, thriving reality. She pictured herself behind the counter, laughing with him, creating recipes side by side. She imagined mornings filled with maple air and evenings of soft lights and shared silence. I imagined this, she whispered. Not the bakery itself, but us. A life that felt honest, simple, but I was afraid it wouldn't be enough. And now? Noah asked again. Emma breathed slowly. For the first time, she allowed herself to truly feel everything. Not hide it, not control it, but simply let it reach the surface. Now I realized that the life I chased never tasted right. It looked perfect, but it was missing this feeling. The feeling that I belong somewhere, not because of what I do, but because of who I'm with. Noah's face softened even more. Emma, he said gently, I don't need perfection. I never did. I only ever wanted real. A long silence stretched between them, but it wasn't empty. It was full of everything that had been left unsaid, everything that was being rebuilt in this moment. Emma finally broke it. Noah, I want to know if it's too late. If I've lost my chance. Her voice shook. Because I won't lie to you. I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything about the future. But I know that what I felt when I tasted that dessert was hope. Noah stepped closer, his voice firm but kind. It's not too late. But this can't be something you choose halfway. I spent years finishing this recipe because I believed one day you'd want to finish our story. If you choose this now, I need to know you're choosing it fully, not out of fear, not from regret, but because you're finally ready to feel everything you walked away from. Emma nodded, tears finally slipping down her cheeks. I am ready. I don't want a life that looks right. I want a life that feels right. And every real feeling I've ever had started with you. For the first time that night, Noah smiled. Not the polite smile he gave customers, but the real one that reached his eyes and made her heart tighten. Then this, he said, gently tapping the plate, is just the beginning. Their eyes locked in a moment of deep understanding. No dramatic declarations, no perfect lines, just truth. And that was stronger than any promise. Suddenly, a gust of wind shook the door. The lights flickered. The room went quiet as a woman near the window gasped softly. Snow was falling harder now, swirling under the street lamp. The night had turned dark and still. Emma didn't notice at first. She was focused on Noah, on the possibilities unfolding around her. But then she heard the faint sound of footsteps in the back hallway, the private area of the bakery where no customers were allowed. Noah's expression changed, serious, alert. Emma turned, confused. Is someone else here? Before Noah could answer, a figure stepped into the light at the corner of the hallway. Emma froze. It was a face she hadn't seen in years. And the moment their eyes met, she felt the ground shift beneath her. Everything she thought she knew was about to change. Again. A tall figure stepped out from the hallway, and for a moment Emma forgot how to breathe. It was Grace Whitmore, her younger sister, the last person she ever expected to see here. Grace, with her auburn hair tied in a loose braid, held a box of pastries, her expression frozen in shock. The room grew silent. Emma remembered their last conversation, years ago, filled with anger, misunderstandings, and slammed doors. Their relationship had fractured when Emma left town and never looked back, not even when Grace begged her to stay for their mother's last days. Emma's throat tightened with guilt. Grace's eyes moved from Emma to Noah, then to the dessert plate in front of them. She set the box down on the counter slowly, her voice quiet but firm. "I knew you'd come back for him," she said, not unkindly, but as if stating a long-awaited truth. "I just didn't expect you to actually stay." Emma swallowed hard. "Grace, I didn't know you were here." "I thought you moved to Colorado." Grace nodded slowly. "I did, but 6 months ago Noah called. He needed help with the reopening. He asked if I could come back temporarily. So I did," her words softened. "And maybe a part of me hoped you would come too." Noah glanced quietly between them, sensing this was a moment that needed space. He stepped back, folding his arms as he leaned near the shelves, watching with calm patience. Emma stepped forward. "Grace, I'm sorry. I know I left everything, Mom, you, this town, without looking back. I convinced myself I had to leave to find happiness. But I didn't realize I was running from the only place I ever felt real." Grace's expression wavered. For a moment, she looked away, blinking back emotion. "You weren't here when I needed you. I was angry. I won't pretend I wasn't," she paused. "But I also always knew why you left. You weren't ready to stay. Not with Mom sick. Not with your heart still confused." Her voice softened even more. "But you're here now. And if you're willing to stay, then maybe that's what matters." Emma's eyes filled with tears, not the kind of sadness that broke you, but the kind that healed you from the inside. "I am willing. I'm done running." Grace gave a small smile, then stepped back, leaving Emma and Noah alone once again. The bakery's fire crackled softly. The scent of cinnamon braided through the air. Outside, the snow had begun to glow under the streetlights, falling slowly like soft feathers from a quiet sky. Noah walked to Emma, his eyes never leaving hers. She didn't need grand speeches. The honesty in his gaze said everything. This wasn't a miracle moment. It was a real moment. A decision. A beginning. Emma took a deep breath, feeling clarity settle into her bones. "I'm ready," she said, "not just to try a dessert. I'm ready to try life with you. To build something real, even if it's messy, even if it scares me. Because I finally understand that love isn't supposed to be perfect. It's supposed to be true." Noah reached out, gently taking her hand. His touch was steady, warm, rooted like the town itself. "Emma," he said quietly, "there was never anyone else." "Not really. It was always you." In that moment, Emma realized that love wasn't a lightning bolt. It was a steady flame, one that had been waiting for her to stop shielding her heart from the warmth it needed to grow. She looked down at the dessert once more, the symbol of everything unresolved. This time, she didn't hesitate. She lifted the spoon again, took another bite, and let the flavor settle into every part of her. It tasted like maple mornings, lemon sunsets, and vanilla promises. But more than anything, it tasted like a future she was finally brave enough to choose. Soft applause broke out from a couple of regulars sitting near the front. They had been quietly observing, sensing the significance even without knowing the full story. Grace leaned against the counter, arms crossed, smiling through tears of relief. Noah didn't move quickly. He let the moment unfold, step by step, like the slow rise of dough in a warm oven, natural, patient, perfect in its timing. Then gently he stepped closer, his voice low. "Emma, this bakery has always been my dream, but it never felt complete because you weren't in it. I don't want a love story written somewhere else. I want it written here, with you. Are you truly ready to stay?" Emma looked around. The bakery wasn't just a building. It was life. It was people. It was warmth, heart, community. It was everything she had been missing. She squeezed Noah's hand, her answer clear in the softness of her eyes. "Yes, I'm ready to try it. Not as a question anymore, but as a choice." Outside, the snowfall became gentle glitter, drifting across the glass window like blessings from the sky. Inside, the lights glowed a little warmer, as though the building itself was smiling. Grace stepped forward and placed an apron gently into Emma's hands. Then welcome home. Emma took it, her heart full. She tied the apron around her waist as Noah watched, his gaze filled with pride, relief, and unmistakable love. As the night settled into peace, Emma stepped behind the counter, standing beside Noah. Their shoulders touched. They didn't need to speak. Everything was clear. For the first time in her life, Emma wasn't chasing a future, she was standing in it. And somewhere in the quiet warmth of that cozy Vermont bakery, with snow falling softly outside and love rising like fresh bread inside her heart, she tasted something she had spent years searching for. It was happiness. Real. Grounded, gentle happiness, not a dream, not a memory, but her new beginning.